My name is Maria Barnes, and I am the chapter president of Access User Group Lunchtime. Welcome. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what's new in Access, specifically over the past year, but I'm going to focus most of the time today on some brand new features, and these are not available for anything except for Office 365. And I do specify here what version of Office 365 these new items are in. So the first thing we're going to talk about is something that's brand new. I'm pretty sure that it's now available in the monthly channel of 365. So the version number is 2002. So if you, for example, have 2001 or a 19 version still, then you won't see this. But if you have 2002 or beyond, you should see these improvements. So I'm going to show them here in Northwind database. This is just a standard Northwind database. I'm actually on the Insiders version, so there's one thing that I'm going to show a little bit later that's only available on that version, which is 2004. But this one should be available monthly and beyond. And both of these features are available, for the most part anyway, both in the Relationships window and in a query. I'll pull up a decent one. Yeah, query like this or the Relationships window, then these features are available in both of those. The first thing is having a mouse scroll function. You see the slider bar over here, but that was never operational with a mouse scroll. And if you have a mouse scroll option, you may absolutely love it and you may be frustrated by this. I don't. I have a touchpad, but supposedly I can do a mouse scroll if I can get it to operate here. See, look at that. And now I got to go the other way. Voila. And I might add that a lot of these improvements are improvements that Microsoft Access team has made directly from your input at User Voice. So good job if you're using User Voice and requesting some of these improvements. They have been listening. Another thing, and these are just my notes here, and I will publish in a blog that's on our Access User Group Lunchtime. This is just a 4 screens, including some links at the end, PowerPoint. So you don't have to take notes here. You can reference that at the end. Another biggie that I absolutely love, when you're in SQL View here, there is now Find and Replace. It's actually on the Home tab, and you can do the Find button, or you can do Control F and a Find will pop up. Say you had a great big long query and you wanted to find out where products was. Voila. It highlights it. You can do Find Next. You can even do Replace. If you're like me and you like things formatted a little differently, or say you want to make a change and instead of using orders table, you're going to use orders new or something like that, you can easily do so now with Find and Replace in the query editor. I think that's huge. Also, we can use multi-select boxes. So the place where I would use this typically is in the relationship window. And again, we're looking at the Northwind database for a sample here today. Your typical, you draw a box and it selects the items. That now works. Maybe not quite as useful in the query window, but you could take that and then you could take those and you could drag them someplace as a group or whatever. Let's see, what else? We also have some additional right-click options. So if you right-click on the tables, you can now get something to open in table design mode, for example, in the relationship window. In the query window, you used to have just a couple options. You had properties and remove table. Now there's open, so you can actually open the table in a grid-like view where you can see the data. If you're wondering, you can't remember what you're doing or what it looks like and you want a sample of the data, you can use the open feature. I'll just show you that. Or you can open it also in design view right here from you still have the read-only thing, but you can open it and take a look without going out and and searching for it over in your tables and all where you need it. Notice also that you have size to fit. So you have a size to fit option. Besides the size to fit option, you have a couple auto size options. You can double click on the bottom line and that sizes down, or you can double click on the lower right corner and that sizes like the auto size would do. I think these are spectacular. And again, a lot of us have been asking for some of these kind of things in user voice. So good job. Once again, if you joined us late, because we do have quite a few people on now, and when I started, there was only about 6 of you. This particular group of what's new in Access that we're talking about is improvements that have just been made starting in version 2002, which should be this is a February release and should be what's in the monthly version, I believe, of Office 365 right now. So we've gone through all these scroll, find and replace in SQL, multi-select the controls, some additional right-click and auto size, and then we have a brand new add tables interface. So let's take a look at that. So now when we add tables, instead of that pop-up, which I don't know about you, but I wasn't too fond of, we now have an interface over here, which reminds me actually a little bit of the new link table manager and some of the things there. There's several different tabs here. You can get an all tab where you're listing everything. You can list queries separately than tables. There's actually links, which if you had link tables, like to SQL or to some other backend database, those links would be in this separate area. The Northwinds database that I'm using does not have any, so there's nothing in the link section. And then look at this. There's a search option. I love this. So for instance, if you were concentrating on orders, you could type order and it would filter on only those tables with order in there. So this is super exciting. It makes it much easier for you to modify things and add just what you want. You can also select more than one at a time. I think with the select button like that. I don't know, did I go like this and add selected tables? Oh, I hit it a couple times. Whoops. See if I can back out here and try that. No, let's not save. You can do the same here with the relationship window. You can use the add tables from that as well and add tables into your relationship window. Neither orders or order details are in there. So if you selected both of them at once, then you could add them both together like that. So that's about it. Does anybody have any questions about the new query improvements or the relationship improvements? And you can unmute yourself and ask specific questions about them, or you can type in the chat and I'll try to answer your questions.
Maria? Hello?
Then as well, if you have feedback on this, I would love to hear your feedback. I'm happy to pass it along to Microsoft. So if you have comments, you absolutely love this. It's not working either. Oh, I cannot. Oh, now I see that Adrian is, oh, okay, hold on a second. Let me look at something here.
Okay.
There we go. All right, try it again, Adrian.
Can you hear me, Maria?
Better. I can hear you.
Marvelous.
Sorry, I had everyone else muted.
You're obviously fine. You're doing a fine job. I just wanted to ask, can you drag the tables across from the add tables?
From the add tables? I think so. I think you can do like that.
Marvelous. Yep. Good.
I notice how this says orders 1 because orders was already in here. You know, this is fairly new and I've played with it some, but not a lot. Yep, you can drag them both. It's really much more of a modern UI than that pop-up interface was.
There's a question on that. I notice you have to keep dragging the details part down because you've been in here before. Does it not remember where that's set? Or did you not save it before?
I did not save it before.
So that would explain it.
Yeah, it should remember that. Yeah. And I actually probably opened a different query than I did the first time when I was in here. And I had added a bunch of things that I didn't necessarily want to save.
Of course.
Double clicked a couple times, so I exited out. Any additions on the SQL side, like full outer join? Not that I'm aware of what's allowed in the SQL at this point, but we do have, if you missed it, the find and replace on here, which is really handy. So you can find a word and you can do replace as well. That's super exciting. As of yet, there's no like auto format that I'm aware of here. Now the scroll bar does work for this as well. Let's show that actually. Property window. Let's see how I can get this smaller here. Put it back in design view and get maybe property sheet over here. Whoops, wrong properties. Okay, so I got property sheet over here. Then I'm going to take this into SQL view. Oh, of course, that went away. I was working on a thing like this, and this was really big. You could use the scroll as well with this. Scroll back and forth and use the mouse scroll. Can you find a table in the relationship view? I don't think so. Let's take a look at that. You can in the fact that you can search for it in the add tables section, but no, it doesn't look like find is enabled on there. Let's take a quick look. Control F, no. So it's just in SQL view right now. I don't believe it's in design view of either the relationships window, which is, I believe, always in design view, or in design view of the queries. Yep, add it to user voice if you still would like that, because it would be good.
There's a question from Giorgio. Did you get to answer that one about the full outer join?
I tried to. So
I beg your
don't
pardon.
believe that there is any changes in the types of things allowed in SQL. So if the full outer join was not allowed before, I don't believe they've made any changes to that. Giorgio, did that answer your question? Basically some UI changes and additions. If you didn't see it before and got it here a little later, things like you can go in and actually open the table from here or pull the table up in design view from here, some things that you couldn't do before. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next set of changes. And I do want you to feel free as you come up with other things or comments to keep typing in chat. I'm also going to post my email at the end here, and you can always email me later with questions or comments you have, as well as take a look on user voice and add your comments there. So the next thing was the month before that, and that was separating out the ACE redistributable. I think I said that right. So just to kind of back up and explain what's going on here. The issue started with Office 2016, and it's perpetuated in Office 2019 and in Office 365 editions. When Microsoft published Office 2016, they did not expose the ACE engine outside of Office itself. Prior to that, in Office 2013 and earlier versions, the ACE engine was visible by other products. And this created an issue. Other programs that were trying to use the ACE engine to connect to Access or to do other Access-related things weren't able to use that engine. So the workaround for that, and we've been dealing with that for several years now, is to install a separate ACE engine. And you can't just download a runtime. That's really the runtime. You can't just download any version of it or even the same version that you currently have. You have to do a different platform, and you have to load a different bitness. So if you have 32-bit Office, you have to download a 64-bit runtime. So it's confusing, it's hard to set up, and I believe that starting with 2013, they didn't even do the runtime engines. So it was a mess. So they're working on correcting that. As of the 2001 edition of Office 365, the ACE OLEDB provider is now exposed. What this is supposed to say is this should enable things like Power BI and SSMS to run without a separate ACE engine installed. And coming soon, cannot type. They're going to be doing DAO, which should allow SQL Server Migration Assistant and ODBC connectors. Microsoft's committed to that. I don't think they committed to an actual date, but I'm certainly hoping that we'll see that sometime this next year. I myself use SSMA when I'm upgrading an Access application to, say, Azure SQL. So it would be really handy not to have to, get this cross-bit separate ACE engine installed. So I think that's a great improvement, and going forward will allow us to proceed with new installs with minimal setup work for working around this ACE engine. Questions on that? All right. Then the next changes I want to go over are just 3 kind of random changes. The first one is only available in the Insider version, which is 2004. So it'll come in a month or 2 if you don't have Insiders. And the other 2 are from earlier in this past year. And so I do want to make sure that you are at least aware of those, so in case you haven't been keeping up to date or something. So if you go in and you're taking a look at colors, and this isn't all that big of a deal, but it's something that's kind of handy. And you're looking at the property. Let's go with a color here. Like we've got this 4 color. See that when you specify in Access, you've got this hex type format of the colors. And if you go to the More Colors tab, you've always had a couple different models, but typically I use the RGBD. And you've had the red, green, blue hue, but you've never had this box before. And so this is now added. So it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice feature. If you pick a color, it changes to what it was. I click twice there. Changes to whatever it was. Okay, a couple of the other things. Well, this isn't a good example because this is a pop-up form, but if we've got other things open, like we've got a query running, it used to be that Access had a way to close each of these tabbed forms, but that X was clear over here. And so people got confused, especially I know I would be on the phone with somebody, and you'd be like, close out the X, and they're closing this X instead or whatever. But now this looks both the fact that it's kind of a square tab and the fact that the X is right inside the tab, much more of a modern interface. So hopefully if you have Office 365, no matter which of the versions, you now see that. And I think they did put that one in 2019, if I recall. But I lose track, so don't hold me to that. I do have several links for you, and again, I will post this on our blog. But there is what's new in Access. This is a link to that. You should also know that if you go to the account window from File and then Account, there should be a What's New button on there, and you can see, I think it's more, tailored to your version. rather than a more generic what's new in Access. And I will say that I don't think right now anyway, the support article here is as up to date as it should be. Hopefully they're going to be working on that. As we saw in the first section today, a lot of the improvements that were made through user voice. So I put a link to that. So please, as you vote for things, the Access team is definitely looking at that. They're listening to us. They obviously have a limited staff and budget, like we all do, right? But they're trying to at least use that input in their prioritization process. So please do keep voting for things on there. I also put a link to a blog that our new Access leader put, and I'm going to maybe go to that one. This explains a little bit more about the, oops, I hit it twice again. This Abo, our Microsoft team lead, put this together here back in February, and it explains a little bit more about breaking the ACE Access database engine redistributable out of the Office package. And here's where he promises to work on exposing the other two interfaces soon. I'm hoping that he keeps us up to date, as things happen on that and progress on that, so you can see when that's actually coming. And then finally, I left my email address so that if you wanted to contact with me with any other comments or suggestions for me to pass on to Microsoft, I'm happy to do so. And then I guess since we have extra time, if you'd like, you're welcome to stick around. We could talk about Access in general. We could talk about the environment. How are you doing working from home? Are you working from home? What can Access do to help out? There was another blog post recently. I don't know if you've looked at the tech community blog at all, but we had a new one out not very long ago about getting Microsoft Access to work remotely. And there's some nice key suggestions, and our beloved Access Users Group leader, Juan Soto, helped contribute to this one, or wrote most of it, I'm sure. So that might give you a few ideas about other ways to use Access remotely.
Maria?
Yeah.
Being able to specify the font within the Zoom window.
Yes.
Now, I'm pretty sure that although it wasn't savable between sessions, we did have that in Access 2003. So I'm wondering why that's a new feature. Is it new that it saves it for you for between sessions?
Good question. I thought that was something
I use that exactly as you suggest, because it's
right.
Sometimes it's a bit small, and I, some of us are older than others. I've probably got a few years on you.
So I think that Zoom and the ability to adjust the font has been there since probably Access 97. I think Michael Kaplan stuck that in. Is kind of a, hey, look what I did, and nobody really figured it out until it had been shipped. But I believe you're right, Adrian, that the ability to save it between sessions is what they added. Because before you had to adjust it every single time.
You could do between sessions. You save for a session,
right,
and then just drop it in the bit bucket.
So I don't remember the button. Maybe it was, and maybe I'm just not remembering because it's not honestly something that I use frequently. But I don't remember the button before. But
It was on the right.
You could right click or select and right click or something like that.
It was on the right. Yeah. The button. It was bottom right. Let me drag one
over
up
this way.
I can't show you very easily,
Right.
but that would be that'd be difficult on my system. But Shift F2. What you had is you had the OK and the cancel in a section to the right, like you have your properties displayed.
Right.
You have a section on the right. You have OK at the top, cancel, and then at the bottom, font ...
Okay. All right. So maybe that one's not as not quite as
very handy to be able to save it, frankly.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, especially if you are taking a look. And again, I'm pretty sure that it's database sensitive and not through the whole application, but that's something you can play with.
Sure. The other point I was going to make, did you explain this? I mean, I know having had it presented to us a number of times, it probably makes a lot of sense, but you showed a slide earlier where you had which versions things had come out in, and a 2002 and a 19 blah, blah, blah. I wondered if everyone had been explained to that the first two digits are the year and the second two reflect the month, going from the monthly release.
So in general, and okay, let me back up a little bit. So these versions probably also apply to things like the perpetual versions in the security fixes and that kind of thing. But mainly I'm talking about Office 365 here. There's several different tracks you can go on. The quickest one is called Insiders, and we really don't recommend that for anything that is a production run. So if you've got a production computer, you don't want to install Insiders on it. And then there's a monthly and a semi-annual channel, and then each of those has what they're currently calling a targeted channel, which is kind of like a month or two before that release. The purpose of that would be like if you had a large company and you wanted to set up a few key users in the targeted version, then they could test that out for a month and then have the rest of the company roll to the either monthly or semi-annual, depending upon what you chose. And Microsoft's actually recommending, at this point at least, that most people try to use the monthly version for their production systems. But only you can judge your business. That does give you new features quicker, but of course that does, if there is a problem, then you might be exposed to it before they could fix it later down the road. And then there are people that want to stick with the perpetual version so that they only have to change once every 3 years or whatever, although they get security updates, which we know can also break things. But yeah, so 2004 right now is Insiders. The first two digits of the number are the year, which I know that it's 2020. And then here, this was 2019. But the first two digits are the year, and then the second two are the month. And so this is 2004 because it'll get released to monthly in April. I've got it early because I'm on the Insiders channel. Hopefully that makes some sense, and that I got it semi-right, because I must admit that I get a bit confused by all the different versions as well. So if you're slightly confused, you're not the only one.
You and everyone else, Maria.
All right. Any other comments? And you're welcome to put in the chat if you have a question or just a general observation.
It looks like people want to talk about remote use of Access.
I'm not seeing that. Are you seeing that in the chat?
Yeah. I second the remote use of Access. I would love to hear more about using Access
Oh, I do
remotely.
see that.
Say again?
I do see that now. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's my
let's
voice,
talk
Maria.
about
It's magic.
a little bit. I don't think Juan will mind. So, I'll be honest, when I think about getting Microsoft Access to work remotely, I usually think about having a Access front end and then migrating my back end to SQL Azure or something like that. That's my first thought and one of my first recommendations. But there are other ways that you can go about doing this. You can consume your database through a remote desktop software. And there's a couple links here to get you pointed in the right direction for that. Obviously, you can upgrade your backend to SQL Server. And you can also enable a VPN. There's several VPN solutions that are quite cost effective now, even for small businesses. If you've got something other than like a SQL Azure backend, or depending upon your application and how often it queries and how much you have improved it to enable the most out of a remote query situation, you might want to enable a VPN to help with speed. Yeah. So any specific questions or comments about the remote? I think it's, it's something we're definitely addressing right now, and the future. We don't yet have like, and I don't know if we're going to get it, something like a web UI. We went down the Access on the web route for a while, and then we backed off of that. There are a lot of us that are starting to realize that applications that we've used inside companies do often have pieces of it that benefit from a web UI, but typically we take that part of it outside of Access to do that part of it. All right, well, if there's, let's see, improving data sheet view. Yeah, I think that's a great question and option. So what Kim is talking about is, I don't know this well enough to know what's data sheet view here. Okay, here's one. Well, no, this is just a query, I think. We'll see.
Form, isn't it?
Yeah, it's it. So I think that was open in data sheet view there. Yeah. So I think what Kim's question was is in this data sheet view, we do have some things that they've improved over, I don't know, it's probably been since 2007-ish, where we get some Excel functionality. We still don't have everything. Things like copy and paste into multiple cells, even some things like, well, we can do some arrow movements. Some of these things have improved, but what would you like to see?
So, hi Maria, this is Kim. How are you?
I'm good. Nice to see you or hear you.
Yeah, I know it's been a while. So I found a DB6 object that you can use that's very sophisticated grid control, and they sell it and license it in order to use it in Access. But it would be nice if you had more functionality around creating a pivot, group buys, other management. When you have many columns and you're trying to have multiple filters, you get constrained in access. So many of the applications that I career with Access come from Excel. Right? People build stuff in spreadsheets, complex to manage spreadsheets. And so the next logical explanation is that it comes to Access. Having more functionality in that grid-like view, data sheet, or whatever they would want to call it, would help that upsell to move big applications out of Access and get them out of Excel and get them into Access. That's really what I'm looking for, is how do we help move people out of Excel and into Access?
Yeah, certainly there are a lot of things that people do in Excel that they can't do in Access. And I think you're right. Some additional filtering options and, maybe even a pivot table option directly from the grid here would be very nice. Again, put it on user voice, because what they can do, the more votes it gets, they're more likely to do. And I know your voice did break up a little bit when you were saying what you'd like, but I think I caught the gist of it. For those of you who have worked in other Windows applications, we often call this a grid, and you can do things like, maybe even drag a column up in a certain area, and then suddenly you've got that as a separator or a total or some type of filter. Even doing things like visually adding multiple column filters where you can see them, things like that. I think that's the kind of thing, or part of the kind of thing you were talking about, if I understood correctly, Kim. Someone talks about her database using a SQL backend and response time being glacial, which I assume is very slow. Then we had them move their database to the C drive, but it's still slow. I'm thinking that if you have something, and I don't know where it's at on your C drive, if it's still in SQL or if it's in backend Access at this point. If you've got a database that is got that much slowness problems, there's probably other issues with it than just the fact that the data is remote. If you have speed issues and you move the backend to someplace remote, whether that's on a local area network drive or someplace in the cloud, you're just going to see exponentially bigger problems with it. There is lots of things you can do to improve speed with something like SQL, for example. You can put the querying work into SQL and only pull back results. So things like pass-through queries. It's very common in things like forms, especially with like different tabbed forms, for you to do things like only fill the data that you can see. Don't fill tabs that you can't see until you actually click on those tabs. There's lots of different things that you can do to improve the speed of your application. So I would say that, yes, you do have to be careful moving your backend remote, but we have lots of people doing it very successfully. So there is a right way to do it, and there are people that can assist if you've got problems with slowness on your databases. Looks like Kim put a link to an active grid. This one's workable with Microsoft Access? All right, any other questions? And if not, I do want to also say that we do these webinars once a month. Last couple, maybe 3 sessions, we've had guest speakers speak on various topics. At the moment, I don't have anyone lined up for April or May. So if there's a specific topic you would like to hear for April or May, please let me know. I'm happy to either find someone for that or prepare that. And then we always take a break in the summer, so we won't have anything in June or July, but then we'll probably come back starting at the end of August with a new season.
Maria,
Yes.
how do we find out when these are on? Without, I mean, if I'm not going to sit and check the web every day, is there something that comes out? Because I saw you sent out an email today, and it was just today, and I had to sort of rearrange things to be able to turn up, which I like to do if I can. Is there any a bit of advanced warning I want to say?
Yeah. So this is a good time, I guess, to just kind of plug the organization as a whole. So first of all, different virtual chapters here, and there's also a place that you can subscribe, and with like, you logged in here, so you might not be able to see. This register button. So you can register for, and the registration is per chapter. So the different chapters have a different focus. There's one with SQL Server. The Eastern time is more of a breakfast US time. There's a beginner's section. If you know little about Access, this is focusing, that just started this year, focusing on how to set up a table, how to set up a form, very basic things like that. So the registration is per chapter. So you have to kind of pick a chapter, and you can register for more than one. But once you register, then you do get emails. We try to send them out a week in advance, but often only just the day before it happened. And then we actually, here's the blog where I'll publish, I haven't put it there, but I'll publish the presentation. And we have an events calendar that will line up what the different events are. This particular group meets the last Tuesday of every month at 12 p.m. Central Time. So most of the time it's the 4th Tuesday, but if there's 5 Tuesdays, it's the 5th one. So you could put that recurring date on your calendar, and or come here and find out. Usually we have events published at least a couple months in advance, with the details about what the topic is going to be. And then all of our videos are available through the video link. They're in reverse order from the sessions. And then we also have a YouTube channel. When you click on the individual, can't single click, and it actually pulls up a YouTube recording of the session. And then there's an actual YouTube channel for the whole Access Users Group.org that you can also subscribe to. Those are the different ways to kind of get connected and find out ahead of time about this. Hope that answered your question.
It does. I was thinking more of when you would be sending out emails to our group, but this actually tells me that I can
sign up yourself if you want. I've been sending out a few emails besides the normal blast, just when they're particularly interesting, I think, to others, but not every time. So
I'm the fact that it's scheduled at a particular time each month is helpful. I'm signed up to so many things. I'm getting a bit cautious about what I sign up to, because I just have to make notes of what I sign as and all the rest of it. And I need a database just to manage it all. but
That's what Outlook
I am
calendar
interested.
is for.
Say again.
That's what Outlook calendar is for, right?
Yes, it's just as straightforward as that, Maria.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And again, if you have feedback that you think of later, please do go to either user voice and leave your feedback there, or you can feel free to email me directly. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great time, great month rather, and try to stay safe. Thanks.
Thanks, Maria.
Yep. Thanks.